George. Okay. All right. You could call the meeting to order. If everybody rise for the Lord's Prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Councilor Armin Mercia.
Here.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Here.
Councilor Milanazzo.
Here.
Councilor Ramirez. Here. Councilor Broderick.
Here.
Councilor Caulfield.
Here.
Councilor Donahue.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Mayor Martin.
Here. The first item is approval of the minutes of the October 24th meeting. Motion to approve by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercier. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Under communications from the city manager, there are several responses in the packet. I do believe the manager also wanted to add to the list of communications. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I have sent along a number of memos and letters regarding various motions that the council has sent on to me or requested from me over the last several meetings. But I also want to just mention a couple other pieces of communication that I've presented to you tonight. One is from Susan LeMay explaining the difference between an interim value adjustment and a triennial revaluation. This was a question that came up last council meeting or the subcommittee meeting, and I just wanted you to have that information as the values are now have been issued and are being reviewed by the public. And then, more importantly, actually, from my perspective, is another letter that I've sent on to you that was on your desks tonight relating to the fiscal year 07 budget. I'm trying to keep the council up to speed on where we are with our financial situation. As you know, at our last council meeting, I gave an update which I indicated that the shortfall that I saw, that I projected out or provided to you this past summer, late August, that I thought that we'd been able to get that down into the $4 million, $4.5 million range. Over the last week, as we've gone in and tried to use the information that the city auditor has made available to us and looked at done further analysis on the fiscal year 07 budget, we encountered some more disturbing news regarding the revenue of available funds. As you know, in our budgets, we have several different sources of revenue. One is property taxes. That, of course, is up in the air as we work out the budget and determine how much money we need to raise in order to provide the level of services that the city deems necessary. State aid, which we know we're going to receive from the Commonwealth. Then we have a couple of other types of money. Miscellaneous receipts, which are permit fees, excise tax, licenses, and the like that are recurring each year. Unfortunately, that was an area that we had, when the City Council was voted the budget back in June, they operated under the assumption that there was going to be $42 million in that account, or collected during fiscal year 07. When we closed out 06, it was more like $40,250,000 that we received, and that's pretty much the target that we have to use unless we can justify going above that. The Department of Revenue regulates that very carefully. The other area was free cash, and that was one where the council operated under the assumption that it was $3.5 million, when in fact it was we're only going to be able to get about $500,000. You're certainly aware of those issues. The other area is what is considered available funds. These are monies that we have on hand that we can transfer out into the fiscal year 07 budget. And the budget that you approved back in June was based, again, on an assumption that there was going to be more money than in fact is there. You voted a budget based upon an assumption that there was $1.5 million in available funds. Just as last year there was $1.7 million that was actually there and you transfer it out to put into the budget, this year you voted a budget assuming there was going to be $1.5 million. In fact, the analysis that the auditor has provided to the CFO and to myself, and actually to you as well, when he gave you a draft copy of the Schedule A, in fact shows only $157,000 of available funds. So we're trying to get a better handle on that. The CFO is going to be meeting with Mr. Fernandez tomorrow and over the next couple of days to see what other resources may be available. But in fact, it's disturbing news because it sets us back once again in terms of our financial picture for fiscal year 07. And I just wanted to bring that to the council's attention because I'm going to be meeting with the Finance Subcommittee next Tuesday and hopefully be giving you the final snapshot of where we are and some ideas of where we go to close that budget gap. But in fact, the problem has once again worsened for us based upon this information that we now have available to us.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can this may be too simple a question, but where do we lose the money? How did it go from 1.5 to 157?
Well, I never saw a real breakdown. When I spoke to the prior CFO about this, I was advised that there was $1.5 million. When I asked about that, that there was, he gave me a rough outline of the sources of funds that were in that account, or in that revenue source, many of which I obviously knew. But it wasn't until we saw the Schedule A that we saw that, in fact, many of the monies that we used in fiscal year 06 don't appear to be there for 07. Many of the parking revolving funds that were transferred in 06 the auditor has indicated to us now that are not there in 07. We think it's going to be better than the 157 that we see, but it's certainly going to be very difficult to get to the $1.5 million number that was targeted. So that was a projection, just like free cash, just like miscellaneous receipts. It was an overestimate, as far as I can see, of how much money was going to be available.
I guess, was this money that we thought was going to be left over, or is this a decrease in revenues as we discussed 4 months ago?
It's hard to say, Councilor. It's money that when you appropriate or when you do your budget and assume that when you say there's going to be $1.5 million there, generally you know that there is that money there at that moment, when in fact in June there was not $1.5 million in those accounts.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, through you to the auditor.
Yes.
Mr. Fernandez, this was recognized on the Schedule A. Is that what you prepare?
Could you repeat that, sir?
The manager has indicated that when the Schedule A was compiled, this is when they discovered the problem here, the shortage. Is that fair? Is that what? Did you know about this?
No, I didn't know because I didn't do the tax recap for the fiscal year until recently when the assessors asked me for a report on any free cash or any available fund transfers, and I went through all the funds and pulled out what we had for available funds, and that's what I gave her, and that's what the CFO has at the present time.
Okay, so you don't compile these numbers?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right, I guess so basically what you're saying is there's a shortage, you're not sure if it's from revenues or from just...
Well, it's certainly from revenues. It's that there isn't money in those accounts that was, or whatever accounts we're going to be drawing upon to make up that $1.5 million.
So I guess what I'm wondering is, did we pay more money out than we thought we did, or did we just receive less?
It's just received less.
Okay.
Or again, I think it's an exercise that last January, February, when the budget first started to be compiled, there was a target number put in there of $1.5 million, and that was never adjusted to reflect the fact that there wasn't going to be $1.5 million in those accumulation of accounts.
So you're telling us tonight you think hopefully we can beef that back up a little bit?
Well, I think the way we have to beef it up is we have to go through all of the accounts of the city to find money that may be out there in some of these accounts. And Mr. Fernandez and Mr. Moses are going to be looking at some of those parking accounts tomorrow to see if there's some money in those. But there was $600,000 or $700,000, I believe, in '06 that went into that that were considered available funds. It doesn't appear that those types of revenues are there this year. We'll certainly do our best to get those up, but it's a problem that the projections that were made, similar to free cash and similar to the miscellaneous receipts, the projections were overestimated.
How do we not know this? That's why I guess I'm confused.
How did we not know, how did the council not know in June?
Yeah, or I'm kind of confused as to who was compiling these numbers and who should have known this.
Well, I would think that at the time of the budget, the CFO and the manager and working with the auditor would have isolated these accounts and determined how much money was available to transfer out.
Again, Mr. Mayor, through you to the auditor. Mr. Fernandez, are these numbers, have you seen the numbers that Manager Lynch is talking about?
Yes, I have, Counselor.
And are these the same numbers that you had back in June and July? Or are they different for some reason?
They're the closing figures from the books for the receipts reserved. What happened is, what I believe that happened is that last year we had receipts reserved from parking meter fees. This year we haven't got any parking meter fees because it all went into the parking department. Nothing was transferred out. The same thing with the parking fines. That's where we derived the money from last year.
I thought we'd make a $500,000 transfer. Wasn't that what we talked about back in May or whenever we voted on the garage and the funding?
Transfer for what?
From the parking account, for lack of a better word. I thought we make a $500,000 transfer every year into the general fund from the parking fee and fine fund.
I haven't. Is that what's in the budget? The transfer out?
I believe so.
If I may,
Mr. Manager.
I think in fact that's probably what did happen last year.
Right.
You transferred that out during the year, but it had to be there for you to transfer out.
There was a shortfall last year.
And when we do the recap sheet, when we have to send all this into the state to set the tax rate, you have to have those funds on hand to transfer out.
Okay, you're going to have more information for us?
We'll have more information for you later. I just, again, I'm trying my best to keep the council informed on all these financial issues so that there aren't any surprises. I think my concern is that the council in the past has made decisions, and there needs to be, the information all has to be out there for you to make the right decisions.
Thank you. I look forward to the report.
Thank you. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. I think the phrase would be, in the past, the council made decisions in the dark, it seems to me. Here's what I don't get. I understood the free cash explanation, and I understand that there were projections made sometime earlier in the year. But in June, when you present the budget, when we vote on it, you're 11 and a half months through that year. So the number should be closer to reality than what you may have wished for in January. All right. That didn't happen in free cash. We were woefully off, and then we were told we had $3.5 million, we had $500,000, roughly.
Right.
Okay. Now, so that gave us the free cash story, which we knew in August when you did an analysis in August. All right. Here's what I don't get. Now available funds is off. Now, again, sometime in January, someone made wildly ambitious projection that 11 and a half months through the year should have been adjusted to say, guess what, you guys, you don't have that much money. But it wasn't. And in August, though, were you led to believe you still had $1.5 million then? I mean, this is what I don't get.
Yeah, I was led to believe, and I will take my share of that I should have asked for actual documentation on that, but I was led to believe at that time
That it was there.
and I have to say, just best practice, good practice, is that you only put the number into the budget that you actually are going to
Right.
have.
But then the books had already closed now at this point, you know, a month, well, you know, a month and a half earlier. So the number should have been pretty accurate.
Back in June.
Yeah.
Yes, they should have been.
Okay.
They should have been known in June.
And it
that's
should have been
my-
known at any event in August when you asked for the
And I
number.
should have, right.
Right. So, you know, and I'll wait the report on parking, because I don't get why the parking is so off. I mean, we raised the fees, you know, not this past fiscal year, the one before, and we had transferred monies in. I guess the question is, are the monies not there to transfer in, or did we just not transfer them in? And these are things that if that's the revenue, if that's the lion's share of the revenue that is contributing to the shortfall, maybe we need a report on parking, and of course there is the garage, but that shouldn't be eating up any revenues yet.
Right.
So if we can get a full report, when you do have an analysis, I mean, you know, $1 million here, $1.5 million there, you know, you're talking shortfalls, and it all translates into one thing. If we can't find the money, we have to raise taxes to pay for this, and it's a big hit. So, you know, the sooner we can get the information, I appreciate getting the information as you come to it, and not in the 11th hour in December, you know, when it hits all at once and we have to take action. But I think we really have to get a handle on what is going, so that the same mistakes aren't made going forward, if it's a mistake, or if it's an issue of there's some problem with parking revenue. I think we should know that, you know, if that's the case. I mean, I don't know why there would be, but, you know, if we can get that, so, thank you.
I agree, Councilor.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I guess, the manager, CFO, or who was tracking these available funds? I mean, I can only say that for several years now, we've asked for an itemization when it comes to revenue and revenue projections. I can recall in years past, we would get a list of, I don't know, maybe 25, 30, maybe 40 line items that make up local receipts and available funds. Through the manager or CFO, what did you look at for available funds? What are the sources that were either transferred in or transferred out into available funds? And that's the first question. And Mr. Auditor, you didn't think to check when you loaded the budget that last year there must have been a shortfall and we transferred in, and didn't the treasurer? I presume it's the treasurer or the CFO. Somebody has to track the revenue to let us know that the budget's out of whack, because there's no way for us to have a balanced budget, including submitting the Schedule A, knowing that there was, you know, almost a $1.3, $1.4 million shortfall when we submitted this. I mean, somebody's got to be tracking revenues here, especially available funds and local receipts.
Available funds are all from receipts reserved agency. That's all your available funds. Any money that's in there that can be utilized, that's what they've been using for the last five years.
And where have those funds been coming from?
They were coming from parking fines and parking meter fees.
Okay, so when there wasn't any transfer in here, is that what the plan was? I mean, the council clearly should have been kept
I
abreast.
have no idea. All I can say is that was on the books. That's what I had on the books, and this is what I had in the books
Well,
this year.
with all due respect, Mr. Auditor, you are the auditor, and you are the last step.
I might be the auditor, counselor, but I'm not I wasn't the CFO, and I wasn't in charge of all that stuff. I give them all the figures that I have downstairs.
I understand that,
and I
but
don't make up the budget either.
I know you don't, but you're the last person on the check and balance system to say, yes, our revenue, we can support our expenditures with our revenue, and I do think it's your job to work with the treasurer to make sure the numbers that he is giving to the CFO or the CFO is using are appropriate. I mean, if we don't have enough revenue, then it is your job to say, we don't have enough revenue, we can't keep spending at this pace. And I think it is, you know, a teamwork approach. It is the CFO's job and the manager to track those revenues, but by the same token, that's why there is, this circle of checks and balances to make sure that what is happening does not happen. I mean, now we're stuck for another 1.3 million, and we're midway through the fiscal year, and it's another big problem that we should have been kept abreast of. And I can't imagine sending this down to DOR knowing that, we got another problem here, and our budget is out of balance, it's out of whack, once again. So, and Mr. Manager, we've been begging for this information on the revenue, because that's where the budget all starts. And anybody can make up numbers. I mean, anybody can put a budget together, but it's justifying those numbers and living with them throughout the year and making them conservative estimates. So I guess my question is, again, how about last fiscal year? Have you found anything, Mr. CFO, what was transferred in to make up, to use this source of revenue?
One of the sources of revenues last year were old parking tickets. We hired a deputy tax collector to go in and get very old parking tickets, and they were successful. Those parking tickets were generally from 2004 and before. The trouble with relying on that on an ongoing basis is those are not recurring revenues.
Right.
You collect them once. And I think that, in a large part, is what we're facing right now. We were successful in the past couple of years in getting those old parking receipts, but we estimated those funds to be recurring, and they're not.
So where will you look now? And maybe this is a discussion for the Finance Subcommittee, I apologize, but where are you going to look now, knowing that those two sources, parking fees and revenue, are not going to be there? Are there what other sources contribute to available funds that you're looking at to try to mitigate this problem, at least for this year?
The first thing we'll do is look at the balance sheet as prepared by the city auditor. Part of this came out when we prepare the information to file for free cash and to certify the tax rate. A lot of those balances from the balance sheet wind up on those documents. And as we were looking through the draft of those documents, that's where we discovered, or at least I saw, that there were funds that we counted on last year that didn't appear to be there. I talked to the auditor today, and like the auditor said, we are getting reports tomorrow morning, and we'll go over those balance sheets to make sure that we're picking up all the funds that we currently have available on the balance sheet that are okay to use in the general fund.
Okay. Well, I'll look forward to the Finance Subcommittee meeting next week, but this is what we need to straighten out, that we're not charging people a parking fee to pay for a general fund item, or we're not overcharging on water to offset wastewater. And that's what my motions were about last week, running the city like a business, that people are being charged appropriately so, and we're not just dipping into the tax fund. No more robbing Peter to pay Paul. And hope to get to the bottom of this, and each week it seems like we're getting more gloom and doom news about our finances, and we need to, I'm glad we're opening the books and finding out where we're at and straighten it out. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
and
Manager.
Mr. CFO.
If I could just respond to Councilor, I couldn't agree more. I think I said that last week regarding the concept of operating like a business, particularly your enterprise areas. Wastewater certainly is already there, but parking, water, I think we need to do that. But I think what I'd like to add on to again is more the other comments you were making regarding the information that needs to be provided to you, to me, and to the public in terms of understanding the budget, understanding where the revenues are coming from. And it's not just numbers pulled out anywhere. There should be full transparency of how you get to those numbers. And the budget document should be able to provide that. That should outline exactly what is coming, what are the sources of the available funds, what are the sources of the miscellaneous receipts, what type of state aid are we getting? Education versus non-education, and what's the breakdown in terms of the property tax, in terms of how much is new growth and how much is an increase in the tax levy. So I couldn't agree more, and I think therein lies part of the problem. I have to tell you that's part of the problem I've had to date in terms of trying to get my hands around the real finances, and I'm very pleased to have Mr. Moses on to work on this with me and to really do the lion's share of that. Is that there hasn't been the type of documentation, the type of transparency of information that I think needs to be to fully understand the financial condition of the city.
Well, I agree, and this, I'll wrap it up, Mr. Mayor, but, we adopt expenditures and so many other things in government based upon certain assumptions, and those assumptions is that we're going to raise the money and that those numbers are real and they're not going to fall in midway through the fiscal year. So I'll look forward to that report on Tuesday and get to the bottom of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Moses, thank you for your hard work and your attention to detail and for rolling up your sleeves and getting right to work. And while you've laid an October surprise on our laps, better now than later. Once again, we've detrimentally relied on misinformation to the adverse effect of the city. Mr. Manager, what is the time frame for mitigation on this? Because we are relying on this money for this year's budget. So when do you have to make the necessary cuts or the coordinated effort so that we can deal with this?
We've already identified a number of budget cuts and budget reductions that I'll be bringing to the council over the next month, as well as proposals to raise revenues in the form of fee increases. There's been a full analysis, full study done that I think you'll be very impressed with the amount of work that has gone into that and the detail that's there. And then we'll go from there for either additional cuts or looking at increases in the tax rate.
Thank you. I look forward.
And that will all be done. Our time frame is to have all of that done. I know that last year you met, I believe, in the last week of December to set the tax rate. It's my goal to have that done a month early.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Milanazzo.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the manager. You recall back years and years ago on the national level, there was a phrase, voodoo economics, that was coined many, many years ago. I think that I'm feeling like we went through a voodoo accounting principles when we put together the FY07 budget. I guess what I would like to look at is a comparison between the FY06 numbers that we used to determine the available cash, the $1.5 or $1.7 million number, versus what is in the FY07 budget now. If we could have that broken down by line item as part of the report, because at least it'll give me some history or some comparison. So if we could include that as well, that would be helpful.
We can do that, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, I received this a half an hour ago, along with my colleagues, and you indicated you are bringing a report together to let us know the bottom line. Mm-hmm. I'm as stunned as everyone else here. This is the first time I've seen it. I don't know who else has seen it, but this is the first time I've seen this. And it's dated October 26th from...
Oh,
well, I'm looking at from Mr. Moses.
No, that's... It was given to... It was done today.
It was done today? Oh,
Yes.
okay. All right. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to the report and looking at ways and means of addressing this shuffle. Right.
Councilor Armin Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the auditor. Were you aware that there was a $1.5 million projected to be transferred in fiscal year '07 budget?
No, I wasn't.
How could you not be aware of that? Aren't you part of this whole process?
Well, I should.
I find it hard to believe that
I should be, but I wasn't.
you weren't. So you had no idea that they were projecting $1.5 million to be transferred in fiscal '07?
No, I didn't.
Thank you.
Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the city manager. I'm just as shocked as everybody here, and I would have liked to have you say trick or treat, and this is just a joke, but evidently it isn't because it is Halloween. I was hoping that wouldn't be it, but it seems like every Tuesday we're coming here with some more doom and gloom, as people are saying, and it's very disheartening because I don't want taxes to go up any more than we're thinking they may, and this is just an added overestimated projection and another setback to our property tax. But I want to know the difference between miscellaneous fees. I thought miscellaneous fees, did they go into the general fund or did they go into available cash? So available funds. Right. So if available funds is what's parking fines and parking meter fees that we're no longer getting, what else is available to create available funds? So if we could have a breakdown, maybe my colleagues know the answer to this, but I don't know. I thought miscellaneous fees like licenses, excise tax, cemetery plot, to sell a cemetery plot would have went into miscellaneous fees. Does this miscellaneous fees go into the general fund? What available money goes into available funds? So I'm not an accountant per se or the CFO, but I like to know the difference and how would we as a city council know to be on top of this? I don't know how we as city councilors could have known this.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Well, Councilor, I understand your dilemma of not knowing how you would know that. Again, I think Councilor Elliott raised the issue of when the budget's presented. I can assure you that when the budget's presented to you next spring, there'll be a full breakdown of every revenue source that we have by type. The issue of local receipts versus available funds. There are certain categories of monies that come into the city that are held in reserve for appropriation. The sale of cemetery lots is one of those. That's by law, that goes into a fund and it sits until you transfer it out. We don't have betterments here in the city that I'm aware of, but betterments come in and go into a special fund and then they transfer it out. Recaptured capital funds could go in and transfer it out.
When you say transfer it out to where?
Transferred by the city council into the general fund.
Oh, so that's what you mean by transfer it out.
Transfer it out into that. The parking fines that were received last year, frankly, I'm a little bit of a loss, and I'll admit that, and that why that was treated as an available fund rather than as a non-recurring local receipt. Most local receipts, most parking fines, I would think would go in as a receipt that would be on an ongoing basis. Each year you'd assume that you're going to get a certain amount, just as you assume you're going to do a certain amount of building permits and so on. But for some reason they were tracked there. Perhaps Mr. Moses knows the reason for that. Maybe there is a reason for that, but I wouldn't have put it there. Free cash is actually, I would always have categorized free cash as an available fund. It's money left over, it's certified by the state to be sitting there waiting to be transferred into the general fund. Here, it was not treated like that in the budget. That's the way I've always treated it, as an available fund.
So the parking meter fees and fines, parking fines, are staying with the parking superintendent now for maintenance of garages, or what's up with that?
Are those in the, is there a revolving fund on those parking? There's a revolving fund that goes into those. It's based upon the information I just, but.
Well,
wait a minute.
That's one of those issues that now that I've seen this issue, I want to understand that more.
Because we have to know where it's going, and for example, we got some money from Drake-it because of the water recently. I don't know, one was $1 million and one was 500,000 or something to that effect, 600,000 and 500,000, and it's gone into the sewer account, a revolving account. So that cannot go into the general fund.
That would, I believe that came in as a settlement, and I believe the vote of the council, and this was something I was going to be reviewing as we move forward, but I believe that went in, by vote of the council, into the enterprise.
An enterprise.
In the enterprise fund, a separate fund.
Once it goes in there, we can't put it into the general fund and use that to offset the tax rate.
No.
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 But
I mean,
we
you
are
can
getting
use
a-
money out of the enterprise to cover costs associated with the enterprise that are paid out of the general fund. Debt service, or benefits, overhead, indirect costs.
So we're getting a good training on municipal finances this evening, so that's a good thing.
That's right.
So thank you very much.
And I appreciate that it's bad news. And again, I wanted to bring this to your attention right away. The last few weeks, actually, I thought I was coming in with some good news each week, that we were picking up a little more new growth, we were picking up a few more dollars here and there. But this was a major setback. And again, I didn't want the council to be surprised next Tuesday when the extent of this problem is fully understood.
Well, I'll expect some good news if we can next Tuesday.
I'll
Thank
do my
you.
best.
Okay, I know we're late for the public hearings. Are there any other matters under communications from the manager? There were a number of responses. Councilor Armin Mercier.
I have a question relative to a motion that I thought was made by Councilor Elliott, but it's listed here as a motion by you, Mr. Mayor. But there were a couple of motions that was combined in one, and that is the exemption for eligible seniors. If I read this correctly, right now, we allow $500 for eligible seniors exemption, but the council could, in its wisdom, increase that to $750. Is that my understanding of this?
Yes, Mr. Manager.
Okay, I'll defer to the CFO.
The ability is actually to raise it to $1,000.
Okay.
You have that latitude.
And according to this, Suleimé estimates that increasing the exemption to $750 will cost $85,500. Is that $85,000 for increasing it?
Yes.
Or a total of $85,000 for the entire thing?
85.
So if this
for
council
increasing.
in its wisdom wanted to increase the exemption for the senior citizens that are eligible to $750, we would have to find $85,000 in the budget to pay for it.
That's correct.
And is it too late for this year?
No.
Or-
Mr. Manager?
If I may, in fact, this was a motion to ask for information on this by Mayor Martin or by Councilor Elliott. It is my intention, when presenting the budget proposal to you, to include a recommendation on this very issue.
Okay.
I think the way I'm looking at the budget situation of the city is that, obviously we have this budgetary problem. We need to make savings by reductions. We need to look at different revenue sources that need to be raised, fees and permits and the like. We are going to need to increase taxes or really decimate services. And I don't think, in talking to councilors here on the floor and elsewhere, it's clear that those services are very important to you and to the citizens of the city. So we are going to have to increase taxes. But there has to be some type of relief for those least able to pay these taxes.
Right.
And so part of my proposal to you over the next 3 to 4 weeks will be that, in fact, the city council adopt a larger increase, and there will be, and I will make accommodation for that within the budget.
I'm very happy to hear that, because there's no doubt the taxes are going to be increased. And that's going to affect some of these eligible seniors dramatically. And so if they could get some sort of relief by increasing the exemption to from $500 to $750, I think that'll offset that tax increase that they're going to be faced with. So I'm delighted to hear that you're going to bring that in as a motion. I totally agree as far as reducing the residency age is something that should be looked at in the future and not this year. I agree with that, because I think that would increase the budget restraints more than we can afford this year. But I'm delighted to hear that we're going to give those seniors that eligibility of getting a more of an exemption based on the fact that their taxes are going to be increased anyway. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just real briefly, Mr. Manager, I made a motion, I realized you were actually out of town that week of the meeting, to ask about having these posted on the website. Your responses, do you have any feedback as how that?
Yes, I'm actually going to be meeting with the IT director next week to go over that. The City of Cambridge has a very similar process of posting them on the web page, and I think that that's a great opportunity for us to keep track of the responses that come out to the councilors, but also to communicate that information to the public.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that concludes the manager's communication, so we'll move to the public hearing. The first public hearing is a petition for an underground conduit by Verizon New England requesting 10 feet of conduit in Fletcher Street. Open this public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. Anybody wishing to speak in favor, if we could just have your name and address for our records, please, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, my name is Joseph Gleason. I'm a right-of-way agent with Verizon New England, Inc. Our office is located at 28 Diana Lane in Dracut. Members of the City Council, what you have before you is a request this evening of Verizon for the placement of approximately 10 feet of conduit on the north side of Fletcher Street to service a new housing project that's going in at 121 through 145 Fletcher Street. My understanding of this project is that National Grid, Mass Electric, has been, or will be, or already has petitioned the City of Lowell for the relocation of an existing pole on Fletcher Street. It's a pole designated 310/9. They're going to be moving that pole. The proposal is to move the pole number of feet in a westerly direction along Fletcher Street, and it would be Verizon's request to place approximately 10 feet from that, place approximately 10 feet of conduit from that new pole location into the new housing project. One housekeeping order, Mr. Mayor. I've looked at the petition plan, and I noticed that the petition plan shows the cross street as being Adams Street. I believe that's incorrect. I believe the street that runs north of Fletcher Street is known as Suffolk Street or Suffolk Road, and I believe the cross street is, the street on the south side is Rock Street. I don't believe Adams Street intersects with Fletcher Street. So with that one small housekeeping issue out of the way, that pretty much concludes my presentation.
Okay. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council? Motion to refer the wire inspector by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercier. Okay, all those in favor of that motion say aye. Any opposed? The matter will be referred to the wire inspector, held for 1 week. Thank you. Next public hearing is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Appendix A thereof, entitled Lowell Zoning Ordinances, by amending various sections. This goes on for several pages. A motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Armin Mercier, second by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor of waiving the full reading say aye. Any opposed? That matter is waived. I believe this is the ordinance addressing sign notification on building permits. Anybody wishing to speak in favor? We'll open up the public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor.
Good evening, members of the City Council, Mr. Manager. My name's Curtis LeMay, 40 Robert Street, Lowell. I'd like to preface my remarks and express my thanks to not only this council and the administration for bringing us forward. I'd like to thank the prior council from last year and administration for starting the ball rolling on this important subject matter that became of interest last year. I am in favor of the ordinance. However, I believe I've spoken with the gentleman from DPD that's here. My concern is with, I know the reading was waived, but in reference to the, let's see,
The new section 11-1-7, notification of building permits. There is a following that are exempt from the regulations under the section, and as much as this sign is good, I think the intent I had on the sign is a little different. I mean, if you look up, say, the Julian Steel project, or someone that's putting in a new road, you're going to see a sign of what's going to come over there. You're talking almost a full sheet of plywood that is going to be necessary for this ordinance. It's not going to be reusable. You're looking for 2-inch lettering, and you just have to, it's a considerable expense. And in a large project, I can understand that. But mine would be, whereas many repairs and even additions without permits, this sign that I have brought with me as a sample will show that and alert neighbors of upcoming work to be done on the lot or a house or a building. That is, work for which a permit is called for as required. In other words, I'm looking for something that is not exempt, but not exempt from my sign that I would like to see. And that is work for any type of work that requires basically a permit. Those that want to either put up an addition requiring a foundation, whether it's a garage or an addition, say a full shed dormer, or a whole new roof requiring dumpsters, this sign will be there, and when it's time to be signed off, the sign would be up there for the whole length of the project. The sign that I had brought up that I said was utilized down in Southwest Florida, I brought a sample here, and it comes various sizes. This is just a simple, this particular size is 22 by 28, but as you can see, it's lightweight, it's reusable. My intent was for the building department to purchase some of these, wherever there's a vendor's name on this particular sign, and they could rent them out for the length of the project. It's attached with a 2x4 on the back, and your lot, plot, plan, and your permit is inside. It's a weatherproof sign. And say when the foundation is done, or the underground, the plumbing, the electrical, or the framing, and the inspector comes to sign it off, this would be visible from 5 feet of the lot line or sidewalk or a visible location. So a neighbor would see this before the work is being done on the site. This way, people are not alerted to the point that you see dump trucks and a bulldozer coming up and nobody knows anything what's going on. I would even like to donate this if this is either through DPD or to the building department for something that they might look into down the road. This will ensure more eyes for the city, because you know this has been a major problem in the past, and as much as the council and the zoning subcommittee has tightened its belt in some areas, this will strengthen the permitting process, and including the so-called catchphrase of approval not required. That's something that struck me last time that was utilized, and I'm not so, I understand it's a state law, approval not required, A&R, but I don't think the average citizen, including myself, was not aware that it was available, even though it's a state statute. I'm not so sure other cities utilize it. I've never heard of it. I think it would be in the best interest of everyone to have that clarified unequivocally and explain where this term began, under which circumstances it can be used, and why it's used, I feel, more in Lowell than it is in other cities. I don't know if this particular sign can be incorporated in the ordinance, but I'm looking for any permit that's taken out to have something so the neighborhood and the taxpayers know what's going on in their neighborhood or city, period. Again, I'm not going to belabor this, but I appreciate everybody's time in this. I think it's an important matter because it would clarify and it would simplify things for people that live anywhere in the city. And thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you, Mr. Lemay. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this ordinance? No one else wishing to speak in favor? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition, hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know a lot of thought and effort has been put into this ordinance, and I think it's very important and timely that neighbors are aware of what's going on in their immediate neighborhood, instead of seeing and be surprised by a bulldozer or whatever and work going on that they don't really know about. But I'd like to hear from the new city planner, James Erickson, because I know he's dying to get up to this podium and say a few words, but I want to know, when do you, now it seems like when anybody goes to pull a permit, they will be inundated with this request if it passes, which will be in effect tomorrow morning if it's approved. I want to know, when do I need to put some signage on my property? For example, do I need to do all this if I pull a permit to do a roof? Or if I'm adding on an extra room, do I need to do this? When do you post something and when do you not? If you can tell us the distinction.
Mr.
Thank
Erickson?
you. Yes,
Sure.
thank you. Thank you, everybody here, the council, mayor, and the city manager. James Erickson from DPD, associate planner. As the ordinance sits right now, it is required for projects that are proposing to construct a new unit or a new primary dwelling structure. So if you're doing, for example, a sunroom onto your house, it would not require this. It would not come under this signed ordinance. And the posting of that would be 14 days prior to either the public hearing that is required for such a use or the issuance of the building permit.
So if you're pulling a permit to put a roof on, or you're doing new stairs or whatever, you could pull a permit, but you wouldn't have to go through putting a sign on the property?
As this stands now, no, correct.
Okay.
You would not have to go through this ordinance.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What is the actual dimensions of the sign that's going to be required?
The required sign, as it states right now, is 48 inches by 72 inches.
So that's like a sheet of plywood?
Correct.
A 4x8?
4x8, yep.
I want to notify my neighbors or
4x6,
one.
sorry,
4x6.
4x6,
Okay.
yes, sorry.
Essentially, I'm trying to give an idea of what
Close.
it might look like. It's close. But I think people want to know exactly what it is. I don't know if that seems like a little bit much. I mean, it might, maybe that's what we asked for. I thought the last sign Mr. LeMay brought in when we did adopt it was a lot smaller, probably similar to the sign he has, but that looks like it's pretty expensive too, Mr. LeMay. But I guess my point is, I fully support notifying my neighbor. In fact, when I pulled a permit to put a garage next to my house, just having that little square piece of paper just didn't seem right, so I went and spoke to my neighbors. But it doesn't seem like putting up that big of a plaque or sign is the right way to go. And that doesn't mean I don't support this. I completely support this motion. In fact, we've spoken of it in the subcommittee many times. We've been looking forward to this, adopting this recommendation. But I don't want the homeowners to go, have to spend, a couple $100 in addition to the permit fee. And there's a foundation fee. Then there's an electrical fee. There's a general building fee. So not to belabor the issue, but I think we're just looking at a placard, maybe 2x3 or something like that can be posted. I think I think that's what we had talked about. So my question is, what was the dimensions? Who came up with that, or is...
I believe that was just, when we reviewed other signed ordinances in other communities, that was probably just a general standard. It's up to the council. You can decide to lower that if you so choose. It's not something that the number is necessarily set in there.
Okay. Well, I don't know what the number is. No, I don't know if we can just amend it on the floor, but I thought something a little bit more reasonable, like 2 feet by 3 feet. And as long as it is on, a garage or additional units, that makes sense. It doesn't make any sense to, like Councilor Mercia says, if you want to put on a roof or, anything else that may require a building permit, which is generally everything, that makes sense. So I support it. I don't know if we can amend it, but I'd like to at least make the sign a little bit smaller, bigger than an 8.5 by 11, but certainly not, maybe not 4 by 6. So I don't know if I can make that in a motion. I'd like to adopt this tonight, but that just seems like it's a little overkill.
Second.
Well, is it, let me check with the solicitor. First off, we can make clear, things that are exempt include renovation or expansion of existing structures without a change in the specific use, construction of accessory structures, so a garage or shed or things like that are already exempt. Things in certain downtown districts are required. And it's really the construction of a new unit. So we're talking about a builder in almost all cases here, not, a homeowner doing a home repair project. But Madam Solicitor, is it, I think it's a minor enough amendment to approve this and change the dimensions of the sign. Is that?
It would not at all be a substantive change to the ordinance. It's just the size of the sign, and the council could make a motion as to whatever size sign it felt was appropriate and pass that, and the ordinance would be amended to reflect the change that the council made.
Okay. So is that a motion, Councilor, to approve the ordinance subject to a change to
Yes.
the dimension of the sign to 2 feet by 3 feet?
Yes.
That's what I heard you say.
Yes, correct, Mayor.
And
second by Councilor Donahue. Further discussion on this?
Better change the lettering size, too.
Councilor Donahue?
I guess, Mr. LeMay brought in I don't want to call it a contraption, but something that you put it in. I'm wondering, can we refer the manner or method of displaying to the new building commissioner to come back, give us a report? I mean, we never did this, so we don't know what works, what doesn't work, what's suitable for this climate, and, so, I mean, I think, he raises some interesting issues in terms of how you can cover it and protect it from the weather, so, I mean, I have no problem with supporting the reduced size, but I think we should also leave open to the new commissioner to come back and say, this is what I recommend how we display it, unless DPD has some input on what was shown to us here tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Erickson, do you have something to add to that?
Well, if you'd like me to comment briefly, we can. That's definitely something that's possible. I agree. We haven't done this before in the city, so it's new to us, and we can also review what other communities have done as well to see what works best in those communities. That's my only comment right now.
Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we also, when we discussed this last subcommittee, it was to find out the size of the sign, and with the commissioner, who was going to track them. Was the city going to own them and rent them? Were people going to have certain standard sizes made on their own? Were they going to be provided and turned back in? But there was also the issue of enforcement in terms of how do we enforce this? If people don't put the sign up, what do we do? So I don't know if there's been any discussion there, if we could also get some feedback on that as well, and maybe it is suitable for when you have the new commissioner come in.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Curtis LeMay for bringing this forward to the council. It's, I think it's a very innovative way of preventing a contractor in the dark of the night putting in a foundation, and the next morning the neighborhood has no recourse. So I think this is a wonderful concept. I also think that the sign that Curtis LeMay brought forward is a nice sign. It's a nice way of displaying a building permit. It's weatherproof, and it will be uniform throughout the city. Instead of having various pieces of plywood, the building permits will get damaged from the rain, etc. I like that. I really do. I think it's classy. And how would you pay for it? How would you lease it or rent it out? The contractor receiving your building permit would put down a fee or a retainer and receive that retainer back once he returns the sign. And how would you enforce it? Before the building permit is put into acceptance, or before the builder can start building, the building inspector will go out and inspect the site and make sure that sign is there. But I think this is a wonderful concept, and I just want to remind my colleagues about the two houses that were built on Westford Street. In the dark of the night, Mr. Manager, two houses were built on a postage stamp. Two houses, not one. And it was a total disgrace, and those houses are still up for sale. So I want to thank you, Curtis, for bringing this forward. I applaud you for it, and I do like that sign, and I would support the ordinance, but I think we should come up with something that's practical. A piece of plywood with building permit stapled to it will not look well, will not stand up to the weather. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Manager?
Just a suggestion, perhaps, of a way to address the issue this Councilor Elliott has raised, but also Councilor Donahue, an amendment perhaps to the ordinance that would essentially read that the sign would be of a size consistent with the regulations of the commissioner. That would then give the new building commissioner the opportunity on a particular project to designate either a sign like that, or if something warranted a larger sign, that would be appropriate.
Okay, Councilor Armin Mercier.
I still have the question that I raised at the last time we talked about this is, we are a diverse city, and we have a lot of neighborhoods that probably cannot read a sign in English. Do we add different languages to that sign? If we go into a particular neighborhood and there's a sign there and people really can't read English, and we send our not our tax bills, our water bills in 3 different languages, and just wondering if they took that in consideration. I believe in English being the language, but however, there's still a diverse city here that would probably wonder how come it's not in Khmer or whatever it is, a language that affects that particular neighborhood. I don't know if that was discussed. I'm in full agreement with the amendment that is being suggested in terms of size. I just wondered why, or if there was any discussion about, what language is put on the sign during the debate. I guess Mr.
Erickson, do you,
was there
do you have any feedback on that?
None.
No. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Good. Councilor Milanazzo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager. I would support the amendment to the ordinance, but would that presuppose then that this wouldn't actually go into effect until the new building commissioner is actually on board? Because, I mean, if we voted tonight, even with the amendment, would it be effective immediately, subject to, I guess just a point of clarification, I guess, is what I'd be looking for.
I think it would, perhaps this is a question to the solicitor of how we would operate on something like this. I would assume that it would go into effect immediately. It would just be that the enforcement would take, the actual enforcement implementation might take a little bit longer as we, because clearly this would be something that I'd want the new building commissioner to work on immediately.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott, do you know?
No, I'm all set, thank you, Mayor.
All right.
Move the question.
Well, so there is a motion on the floor to adopt the ordinance as proposed with a 2-by-3 amendment to the size. I suppose if someone wanted to move in substitution that the size to be determined by the building commissioner.
So moved.
So moved by Councilor Broderick,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Milanazzo. Any discussion on that motion? All right, so roll call then.
Councilor Armin
Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
9 yeas.
9
Mayor?
yeas. The ordinance as amended is approved. Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just while we're on signs, I know this covers just signs for building purposes. The subcommittee also discussed other signs that need regulation where there's currently nothing on the books. Are we any further with that? I don't know if that's you, Madam Solicitor, or if it is planning development, whether it's the regulation of any other signs, political signs, you know, those the enforcement of signs that are put up on poles and fines and fees.
Mr. Erickson, do you know anything about where that stands with the department?
Work from home, yeah.
Right now, it's something that I don't believe we're currently working on. However, it is something that we can definitely take into account, and we can bring back or discuss at another sign subcommittee or the subcommittee that was discussing this sign originally. But right now, no, we aren't working on that exact type of ordinance or regulation or policing, whatever it is that is required.
Okay, because I specifically remember, Mayor, and I think you and I were on the subcommittee way back when this is an issue. There is currently nothing in the City of Lowell ordinances that govern putting up of signs, not just political signs, but any signs. I mean, whether it's, you know, work from home signs, or how are we going to enforce it? I know there's maybe some sign regulations in the historic district, but I think it's important, and we need to, I think what few regulations were in place were in the prior zoning code, and those were wiped out with the new zoning code. I don't know, Mayor, maybe you have a better recollection, but I think we need to address this.
Well, my recollection is there are some restrictions on temporary signage. However, I think there are some outstanding motions that you have filed on this issue, so granted, there's been a change in administrations,
Right.
and so I think the delay is understandable, but there are some outstanding motions to have this matter addressed. So, Mr. Erickson, if you could pass that on back through the department and let them know that's something the council is waiting to take up.
Thank you.
Councilor Broderick.
There was also the issue of signage for Little Leagues, for the fences.
Right.
Right.
We missed last year, but probably ought to get that in the works so they know where they're at for sign-ups and fees and things.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So I think that matter will come back to us at a future date. Next item on the agenda is communication from the manager requesting out-of-state travel. Dear Mayor, City Council has attached a request from Ed Davis, Superintendent of Police, to send one employee to police officer training, problem-based learning program. Program will be held in Folsom, California. Dates of this travel request will be November 6 through 17. Funds will come from the Lowell Police training account. If any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me, Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. So, wish of the council. Motion approved by Councilor Donahue, seconded by Councilor Broderick.
On condition an absentee ballot is taken out before he leaves.
I don't know if we know if it's a Lowell resident. Roll call on the motion.
Councilor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next item on the agenda is a communication from the city manager accepting the resignation of John F. Da Silva from the library trustees. And there is also a letter that I'll read from the manager back to Mr. Da Silva. This letter acknowledges receipt of your letter dated October 4, which you resigned from the Library Board of Trustees effective 11/106. Your resignation is accepted. Filing your resignation and this acceptance thereof with the city clerk is required by law, and forwarding copies as a communication to the city council. The city of Lowell appreciates your years of service as a member of the Library Board of Trustees, and on its behalf I extend thanks. Very truly yours, Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Motion to accept the communication placed on file by Councilor Milonazo, seconded by Councilor Armin Mercier. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter is accepted. Subcommittee, I'm sorry.
Received this, so this is one item, this ordinance
Okay, clerk, this concerns a petition that had come in earlier concerning, I think, a zoning request at 274-282 Appleton Street. The council had acted to refer the matter to the planning board. This is a letter from the attorney of the owner, Mr. Flood. I am writing to you as attorney for Thomas Durkin, the owner of the above referenced premises, and also as attorney for First Concord Realty prospective tenant. On July 31, I requested that a petition be presented to the Lowell City Council regarding rezoning of the above parcels of real estate. The purpose of this letter is to request that this request be withdrawn without prejudice, as parties do not wish to proceed at the present time. If you need further information, please contact me. If we were to take this up and consider, we would need a motion to suspend the rules. So moved by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The rules are suspended. And then also a second motion to allow this petition to be withdrawn. So moved by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Any opposed? So this petition is withdrawn. Subcommittee reports. Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Tuesday, October 24th, a city council motion by my colleague, Councilor Mercier, was presented to the council to honor the Kakavas family with an island dedication or some sort of recognition for the family. And the motion was referred to Tom Bellegarde, the commissioner, who presented it to the Board of Parks, and they unanimously supported it at their monthly meeting, which was held on Wednesday, October 25th, the very next day. This motion was referred back to Commissioner Tom Bellegarde, who met with one of the family members as to a suitable location for the family dedication. There were two areas of interest that were discussed, and this family member returned to the family as a whole to decide which proposal is the best. Until we get a word otherwise as to what site they selected, then I'll convene another Board of Parks and Recreation subcommittee and report on the conclusion. That was the report of progress on that particular issue. The second issue that we discussed was the fact that many of us on this council are concerned about fee structures and putting together some sort of structure for the use of parks, especially Colley Stadium. We were thinking about that before you got here, Mr. Manager, as to what we were going to do with the new turf that cost $800,000 to put down with the self-help grant and a combination of city funds. And we wanted to know what we were going to do to let people utilize that beautiful field, because even though it seems that it's maintenance-free, it actually isn't. That 1 or 2 times a year, we have to pay to have it brushed up or groomed, so to speak, and it'll be a little bit of an expense there. So what they wanted to do, they presented, the Board of Parks got together with Tom Bellegarde, and they had some sort of a set structure of fees, which they presented to you, Mr. Manager, and I know that it involves 3 particular things. Do we know what the fee structure will be? Where do we stand with that? Would we want to turn that money into a revolving account so that we could use that money to maintain the grooming of it and the brushing of the field and the things that have to be done to maintain Colley Stadium? So it's the fee structure, the revolving account, and then there's a third item, which there's a possibility that within the woods there of Colley Stadium, that they're concerned about putting some sort of a cell tower which would generate $30,000 a year, which could be then put into this revolving account. So it's still an ongoing process. I know the law department has taken a look at it. I just wanted to make my colleagues aware that we are ongoing with some procedure here. I'm just waiting to see what comes about it. When it comes back from your office in the law department, we will convene another subcommittee meeting and talk about it further, and I will present it to my colleagues. So this is, in essence, a report of progress, and if you could keep me abreast as to where we're going with this so that we can look at it at our subcommittee again, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, to the council, in terms of the fees, the Board of Parks and Mr. Bellegarde did provide me with, as you know, we were looking at a number of different simultaneously we were looking at some policies regarding the use of fields, and that would include Collie. We were also looking at fees and other revenue sources, as I described earlier this evening, and so they have provided me with some recommendations as to how those fees should be set. The revolving fund issue is one, so I'll be presenting those within the next couple of weeks, and I'll certainly forward those on to you as chair of that subcommittee because they're specific to the parks. The revolving fund idea is, I'm vaguely familiar with the notion that of establishing some type of revolving fund for the Collie. I don't recall receiving anything specific on that from Mr. Bellegarde, but I will discuss that with him tomorrow morning. Sure. And with regards to the cellular antenna, I'm also aware of that. I'm not sure of the current status of that with regards to the bidding, because that's entering into an agreement with one of the cellular providers generally requires that there be a bidding process that allows all of the cellular providers to be able to get involved in that process. But I'll work with the law department on that as well. That's certainly a good source of revenue for the city if we can locate one of those or any number of them within the city.
And I don't want to misconstrue people's thoughts to think that that cellular tower is going to be at the 50-yard line. It certainly is not. It'll be in the woods somewhere, so these are things that I just wanted to make you aware of. Thank you.
Part of the field goal.
Thank you. Motion to accept the report as a report of progress.
So moved.
By Councilor Armin Mercier, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The report's accepted. Additional subcommittee reports. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Flood Issues Subcommittee met this evening at 5:30, and almost in conjunction with the task force that was set up. That includes citizens and member of the managers and his staff, Mr. McCarthy. Just to give the subcommittee update on the meeting that took place a couple of weeks ago, and Mr. McCarthy updated the council on a number of issues that have been worked on and are still being worked on. So I'll just run through them very quickly. Also in attendance, subcommittee members Ramirez and Councilor Ramirez and Councilor Caulfield, Councilor Milanazzo, Councilor Rita Mercier, and the city manager, Councilor Broderick, city manager, and Mr. McCarthy, and as I mentioned, 2 members of the task force from the neighborhood. First item was a CSO project that's taken place that will essentially help the neighborhood in the future. It's a 2-year project scheduled to be completed in 2007. It's an interceptor. There's a major backflow valve that has been installed that'll, I think, primarily benefit residents up on Sparks and Emery, but the CSO, the interceptor that's being installed, will help with the future flood issues. A couple other items that Mr. McCarthy mentioned: leaf removal. Pardon me. Leaf removal in catch basins is being done to improve drainage. Also, the levee study is being conducted, or there's 2 levels of a levee study that's going to be conducted by the Army Corps of Engineers. One is a sort of a short term, with the longer being, the second being long-term, that Congressman Meehan was looking into getting funding for of $150,000 for the Army Corps of Engineers. The manager's going to get an update where that stands. We did receive, apparently the city did receive a letter, and members of the subcommittee and council will receive it from the manager, essentially outlining certain areas that the city can and should be looking into in the short term. Those include, again, the things we can do on the immediate basis, leaf removal, and one item of note was a pump station that was part of the agreement that was put in place back in the 40s to literally pump the water out of that particular area. It doesn't work. The manager's indicated it's several million, Mr. Manager, but that essentially was almost a mandate, if you will, from the Army Corps of Engineer that we do something about that. Brush cutting along the levee bank is something that we can do in the immediate future. So that's on the levee, on the issue of the levee. Those are sort of two-tier approach that is being done by the city to address some of the concerns of the Army Corps of Engineer, and certainly if we could use some assistance from Congressman Meehan to get $150,000 to study that general area to see what larger infrastructure improvements can be made. Other items, evacuations, storing sandbags and or Jersey barriers for the spring to address any potential flood issue again, or at least be prepared. Oil tanks, pardon me, there was, naturally when the flood takes place, oil tanks in the ground or in basements become an environmental hazard. There were a couple that were remediated at the site by Clean Harbor. Issue came up of abandoned property. There's 4 abandoned properties on the in that particular area of Alma, Fayette Street. TJ indicated that one of them is in foreclosure by the bank, and the other 3 will be addressed in the future for repairs and improvements. To date, the expiration of FEMA reimbursement has expired. It's a 60 days from July, so late September it expired. The city has expended close to $680,000 for flood relief, and we have received or will receive reimbursement to the sum of $525,000 for those expenses that we have incurred, which I think the city did a fine job in identifying and justifying those costs, and we appreciate that. There's also still some dumpsters down there. Neighbors do have concern about some illegal dumping in those dumpsters. There are still 2 homes that are being renovated, and the city is still providing that assistance to those homeowners. In the future, neighborhood would still like to look out for resources from MEMA, and we will continue to do that, or the city administration will. Sula May was also there from the Board of Assessors, because when this did take place, the council made a commitment to adjust those values in that particular area for the loss in valuation of the property. Apparently there's only 1 or 2. There were 2 individuals that have concern. One had his question answered, who attended the meeting, Mr. Sargent, and there's 1 other business in that area that feels that he needs his property valuation adjusted as a result of the loss in business. So it was a good meeting. That's really a recap and a summary of the meeting. We'll be meeting after the task force meets again to look at these ongoing issues and continue to make progress and to address them. That's a report of progress, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you. I just want to give an update on 6th Street and Emory Avenue. Back in 2003, those people have been flooded, Mr. Manager, for decades with the stormwater coming off the hill from Drake and so forth. And the city took the initiative to address that flooding issue. And it's nice for me to say that 6th Street and Emory Avenue, White Street, Wardwell Street, and Spark Street, those storm drains have been separated from the sewer lines. And those storm drains will go directly into the river. And by doing so, the backflow valves that have been installed will help the Rosemont neighborhood immensely, because when that flooding occurred, much of the river came right back up through the storm drains and the sewer lines, and that caused immense damage and flooding. So that's good news, and the people on 6th Street and Emory Avenue and those streets I mentioned are just elated because it's working. It's in process. And I also want to thank Bill Hardy and the men and women of Sovereign Bank for the $23,000 donation that they made to the Salvation Army Flood Relief Fund. That donation is going to help another 12 to 14 families in that Rosemont neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to accept the report. It's a report of progress by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The report is accepted. Councilor Donahue.
This is not a subcommittee report, but I just wanted to make an announcement of a subcommittee that has been scheduled for this Thursday, November 2nd at 5 p.m. here in the council chamber on the railroad issue, pertaining in part to the recent leak in South Lowell of the railroad car. Congressman Meehan intends to be present and bring the council as well as the public at large up to date as to where we stand with the federal issues involved and the recurring issues that, and I just wanted to let people know that we do plan to have it televised on LTC for those people who cannot make it down to the chamber but may have interest living in the neighborhood. So it will be televised at 5 p.m. This Thursday.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
This may sound like a crazy request, but is there any way that we could try to contact Guilford Rail, maybe they won't return our phone calls, and get them to the meeting? I think they have an obligation to attend. Maybe they'll snub us, but at least if we don't ask them, they can always say that, you know, we didn't call and invite them to the meeting. But and I'm sure they won't attend, but at least we can say we made the effort and give it a shot.
Councilor Donahue.
That we had discussed previously. I think we even tried to get him here 2 years ago, but perhaps for this Thursday it may be not timely, but this is an effort to kind of bring the residents up to date what's happened in the 2 years since the last bill, and then what action plan that the neighbors can undertake. And I think that would be a great suggestion for a subsequent meeting once we've been brought up to date. The General Services Administration had done a, GAO actually, the office had done a report at Congressman Meehan's request or an investigation. My understanding from Congressman Meehan's office is they've made specific recommendations. Maybe we can see what those are and see why the government hasn't implemented them. So it might be another attack at the same issue, and that is, can we get, you know, the federal government to implement some of their own agency's recommendations. But we would certainly at a subsequent meeting follow up with having Guilford or Pan Am, I think is what they're known as today, present. But for Thursday, we're hoping that Congressman Meehan can bring us up to date as to what's happened, and we can hear from the neighborhood as well as to, you know, not just this one leak, but what also has been going on in these 2 years, in addition to what made the news recently.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, to the councilor, I will not be able to attend that meeting on Thursday night, but I've asked the solicitor to be in attendance. I'm certainly familiar with the leak issues, but I'm also very familiar with the other issues that have been going on in a number of locations, including here in the city, with the problem of idling trains. And Guilford, now Pan Am, did enter into an agreement with the state regarding that issue and some retrofitting of their trains that so that they won't have to be kept idling, which I know is a nuisance to a number of people. Certainly, the leak issue is a much more severe problem that needs to be addressed. I'll make sure that I provided the solicitor with the background information that I have regarding that, so that she can provide that information to the subcommittee if that is needed.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And then, you know, as I said, we anticipate discussing just the railroad's reluctance to notify even public safety here, you know, be it police and fire, when they are going to have a dangerous chemical present in the city. So all that will be discussed, and you know, at some point, something's got to give. I mean, this is just crazy the way things have gone on.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, we have a petition to accept Dean Drive as a public way, and 2 claims, one for personal injury and one for property damage. These items all get referred to the Law Department. Motion is so referred by Councilor Armin Mercia, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The matters are referred to the Law Department. Under motions, first motion is by Councilor Caulfield. City Council requests the city manager have the Director of the Health Department provide a full report on the dumpster ordinance, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercia. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you. The first dumpster ordinance was passed unanimously by the City Council in 1989. The ordinance was amended 38 months ago, August of 2003. And the reason it was amended was to give the ordinance a little more strength, a little more flexibility, a little more teeth. And the amendment to the ordinance, as Councilor Rita Mercier, and I believe Mayor Bill Martin served on the committee with me, was to focus on those dumpsters that were too small. They weren't being emptied enough. And the ordinance indicated that if the business owner had too small a dumpster, then the business owner had to rent a larger one. And in some instances, those dumpsters had to be fenced in or enclosed or make it more attractive in the neighborhood or throughout the city. I'm not going to belabor this issue, Mr. Manager, but what I'm looking for in 38 months, I'm looking for the identity of those dumpsters, the identity of the carrier of those dumpsters, the identity of the business owners. I want to know how many violations have been issued, citations, and fines. The subcommittee worked tirelessly on this ordinance. We had many people come to the microphone, neighborhood activists. We spent months on this ordinance. The law department spent a good deal of time. And I don't want to say it's a failure, but it's being overlooked. And I think my colleagues and the people in this city want it addressed. I don't want to name the street, the business, but there's dumpsters in this city. I go through the city quite often. They're overflowing. And it has to be addressed. It has to be addressed. If we want the city to be clean and attractive, then this is the way we're going to do it with this ordinance. I'm not pointing a finger at anyone, but in general, I hope that everyone involved with this ordinance addresses it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, as you recall, when I first came on about 3 months ago, you and I went out and did a drive through a number of neighborhoods, and you pointed these out to me. And I think at the time, unfortunately, not as much had been done on enforcing that ordinance as should have been done. I'm happy to say, I'm going to get you that full report. I'm happy to say, though, that we've identified over 1,400 dumpsters in the city. We've inspected 407 over the last couple of months as we move forward to implement that ordinance. So, but I will get you that additional information that you're seeking. I agree that the dumpster problem is a serious one for the city and one that we need to stay on top of, and it has to be a priority of our inspectors in the health department, and we will do that. But I'll get you that report.
Mr. Manager, I'm not saying every business that has a dumpster has a violation. I'm not saying that. But it seems to me that the same ones that have a violation aren't being corrected. And that is like throwing mud in our face. And that's, I don't like that, so.
Thank you. Councilor Milanazzo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On this issue, I usually don't like to make things personal on the floor of the council, but I do have to say that I've been looking at a dumpster out my kitchen window for the last 5 years. Now, I understand that the property behind my house is now under agreement, so I'm hoping that the issue of the dumpster will go away. But I mean, I'm hopeful that something can be done about it, because it really has been an eyesore for really a very, very long time. Thanks.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Next motion is by Councilor Broderick. City Council requests the city manager report on street maintenance and street paving programs, seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, this motion is pretty simple. My understanding is that back when Brian Martin was the city manager, there was an assessment or an evaluation done of the city's streets, and the point of this motion is to see if we can get an update, and something was done with it apparently. But if we could get an update, either through DPW or if maybe discussions with the firm that originally did it. I know it's going to be part of your long-term plan for infrastructure updates and repairs. But also I was thinking, you know, when we do it, or when you do it, if you could arrange to have it posted on the website. And we could, I think that, you know, we can use it more and more on the website for people, and potentially even attach a link to it. If somebody has a question or a request for their street, rather than calling a counselor or calling you, and they could probably just send it right and go directly to the right department. And then it could be, if there's an adjustment needs to be made, an emergency, it can be shown right on the website, so people understand what's happening. When you do come up with a plan, we can post that so people understand where their street and neighborhood is at. I know there's perception that sometimes that some of the neighborhoods don't get as much attention as others, so I think that it would be, you know, a way of leveling the playing field for everybody, and make it clear to everybody that where the city stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. I think this is a good motion. Councilor, I have to say it because Councilor Tenzar, those of us who sat here will never forget him taking the book, which I don't know how much room it will take on the website, but it's a pretty substantial book, and he'd throw it over his desk because he would be outraged that we weren't following the plan that we paid good money for. So, you know, I think it makes sense. I mean, a lot of work did go into that plan. Some streets happily can come off the list because they've been done over the past few years, and yet, you know, I doubt the priorities have changed a whole lot, because the streets don't repair themselves; they don't get better, and so, although some may have deteriorated worse, and so it may require some updating, but I don't think it requires doing, you know, starting from scratch, so to speak. So. I think that makes sense. I think if there's, you know, with the caveat, if it's on the website, people don't think their street's going to be done next week per se, just because it is a huge volume. But I think what also makes sense is that there is a prioritization of what's, you know, for the worst streets, you know, in the city, and what should be done, and maybe some, within reason, some projection as to when those streets may be reached, you know. All things depending on budgets, I guess. So, but I think it's a good motion. I think it's important for the council, for the city, and for people to get a clearer idea of rhyme or reason. I think sometimes people think there's no rhyme or reason. Someone calls someone and that street gets paved, and that is not really how it works. I mean, motions come before the council and they get referred to the commissioner, you know, of public works, but there had been a plan or strategy, you know, at least at one time, and I think we should revisit that.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you. There's 1,400 streets in the city of Lowell, totaling over 300 miles. And I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. We bring in motions to have a street repaved. And what happens is the streets that are repaved, the streets 10 times worse. And Mr. Manager, I would like to see you and the Commissioner of DPW come in and say, here's the list of streets we're doing. Because the streets that we're bringing in to be repaved, there's some neighborhoods that are disgraceful. You commented that to me when we took a tour of the city. And that's the reason some of those streets and some of those neighborhoods never are addressed. They don't have some people call on a councilor to get those addressed. So that's why some streets are repaved, and they shouldn't be repaved. There's other streets that should be.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Manager, the council, into the motion. I think it's an excellent motion, and in fact, we're moving forward on that as we speak. In fact, I had a meeting today with DPW commissioner and the city engineer to go over this. I learned of the plan myself when I was meeting with the department heads back in August and early September. And you're right, I think about $150,000 was spent back in 2000 to the firm of Vanessa Hangen and Breslin to do this plan. And the concept of pavement management system, or pavement management plans, or pavement management systems, something that really came about quite a bit during the 1990s with the greater use of technology. And it's really a great way to plan out and prioritize in an objective fashion the improvements that are needed. And it serves really as the guide for your capital improvement program when it comes to the maintenance of the streets, whether it be a repaving or full depth reconstruction or just a crack sealing program, that you prioritize the streets that need to be repaired on a scheduled basis, and that you do it using those variety of techniques to ensure that the investment is maximized. And so I think it's a great motion, and one I'm very happy to follow through on. I can tell you that the cost is considerably less than, to update is considerably less than I had anticipated. So we are moving forward with that. It is going to require us to probably, utilize some of our staff to do some of the update, but VHB has already given us a cost estimate to do it, and we're going to be moving forward on that. And I think the idea of putting it on the web page and issuing an annual list of the streets that are going to be done, and again, working it into the capital improvement program, provides information to the citizens and to the council on how we're going to be utilizing those resources to work on these projects. So I'm happy to move forward on that, and I'll get a full report to the council on this motion.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? Motion's approved. We have two items under unanswered motions. First by Councilor Elliott, request the manager report on partnering with UMass Lowell Engineering regarding feasibility of reuse of the landfill. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion speaks for itself. I know a communication was sent to Dr. John Ting, Dean of College of Engineering. And I know often we hear on the floor of the council, we like to partner with the universities, colleges. We have a great resource here. I still think that we can look at that landfill and come up with some reuse. I drive by it frequently, so I look at it and I say, well, why haven't we done anything? And I know it's been June, but they're back in session, and at least get some answer from engineers, qualified engineers that are going to say, look, maybe we can't. Just tell us no. But I still envision maybe a snowboard park up there for kids in the city that cannot get to a ski area. They can't afford it. And if it's just going to sit there and we can do it, why don't we try it? We did make the effort. Mr. Coggins did send a letter. But Mr. Manager, I don't want to report back from someone at Public Works that says, you know what, it's a 15-year plan. We've never reported. I don't even know if we're making any money from that methane. How much methane is coming out? Is it still worth it? Are all the recovery valves working? And if they are, or if they're not, can we use a section of it? So it's just a motion I'd like some answer from. And we have a university with I would say nationally renowned engineering department. There's got to be some students there that would like to take this as a project to say, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. Maybe we can't, but can we find out?
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you go down 495 and you look to the right when you're in Amesbury, there seems to be a landfill that they're using as a sledding area, and they get different. Was not a landfill? Or it was built for that?
Yeah. Ours sits on top of gas.
Oh, I thought that.
Yeah, I'm not skiing on that slope.
They all sit on gas, and they're being redeveloped across the country. So that's a misnomer that they're sitting in. They're all on gas, and they're all being reused. So maybe we can get someone qualified that can give us an answer.
Okay. The next unresponsive. Motion by Councilor Elliott. City Council requests the city manager to report on revenues in the Senior Disabled Voluntary Contribution Fund. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 2002, I filed the motion to set up, according to Mass General laws, a law that was adopted, on to establish a senior disabled fund. And in 2004, I filed the motion getting, where are we at, how much money is in the fund. I did ask the auditor tonight, and I'll ask him again if we could, or actually the CFO, can we get a report on how much is in there? Because I remember back, Councilor Mercier filed the motion, Rita Mercier filed the motion. This money is for seniors and disabled to help them in our community. And we'll notice we each get one in our tax bill. There's 3 checkoff spots, and people in the city have been generous. I believe there's $13,000 that have been sitting in there for quite some time. But what we need to do is apparently set up a committee to find, to develop ways to distribute it. And one is a member, I think, is a treasurer, the assessor, members of the community. We set it up. People were kind enough to check it off. They check off a local scholarship fund, local education fund, and the senior disabled fund. So, Mr. Manager, can we find out what we have to do? Again, we're going into, maybe we can help our seniors with fuel bills or abatement. We talked about exemptions tonight. The money's in there. Let's give it to the people that need it.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Okay, all right. Councilor, I will do that. I just wanted to double check on some of these numbers here. I can tell you that I don't have the actual balances. The 13,000 sounds probably about right,
okay.
But I can tell you that through today, we've received $305 into that fund in fiscal year 2007.
Oh.
In 06, we received about $1,000 that was put into that fund in revenues going in.
Okay.
But we'll follow up on that in the committee format. I'm familiar with a number of communities that have put in the education or the scholarship funds together, and so we'll do something similar here to.
I think if people knew what the money was going for, it may, give them, they may contribute more. So,
right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Armin Mercier. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? We stand adjourned.
You earned your keep tonight. Don't retire.